county signed off on it.
All set?
All set.
All right. I'd like to call the regular meeting of the Village Planning Commission of Almont for November 6, 2025 to order, please. May I have a roll call?
Tedeschi,
Here.
Meek,
Here.
Zunder,
Yep.
Dyke,
Present.
Miller, Keller,
Here.
Schneider.
Here.
Schneider.
There he is.
Say
He's waiting for his name to be called.
He must have heard us calling.
Right.
The next item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. Unless there are any changes or alterations or corrections, I accept the motion to approve the agenda as is presented.
So moved. Support.
I have Steve as a move and Tim as a support. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carried. The next item is the approval of minutes for the regular meeting of October 2nd, 2025. They've been included in your packet, rather lengthy, by the way. We must have had a great conversation. Anyway, unless there are any changes or alterations, I would accept a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
I wasn't here at the last meeting. It looked okay to me. If anybody sees it, any problems?
Glenn moved. Do I have a second?
Support. Oh, I'm sorry.
Gary seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carried. The next item is communications. We don't have any this evening. We have no public comments this evening. We do not have any public hearings this evening, and we don't have any new business this evening. The next item on the agenda is unfinished business, text amendment, processing change in use, zoning permits. And Caitlin, I have just a suggestion for the members. Since I was reading through this again, and we have basically 4 things to cover. Why don't we take one at a time, talk about them, because she lists the pros and cons in each one, and see if we can get some agreement before we move on to the next one. Would that make some sense?
Yes.
We'll start out with the change in use, and let's discuss that one first. See if we get an agreement, yes, this is what we want to do, and then we can move on to the next one, and the next one, and then we can look at your proposed zoning changes. Does that make any sense? I just offer it as a suggestion, as opposed to trying to swallow all 4 of them at the same time.
And the concepts are unique to each other.
They are in respect, yeah, but if we take one at a time and discuss them, so I will turn the meeting over to you, and we'll start on that basis and see how we go.
Okay, sounds good. So the cover letter is essentially similar or the same as you guys had it previously last month. And so the first option available to us as far as how we want to process permitted uses is the current change in category and a change in use. The term change in category is what we currently have in our zoning ordinance. What we've termed that to be is it's in the table of uses, we have different categories. So there's residential, there's commercial, there's industrial. Those are different categories. So we have a office that's then converted to an apartment. That's a change in category. Then we have change in use. Change in use, for example, is anything that goes from one thing to another. So if it's office space and then goes into a restaurant, still commercial in that category, but it's changed its use. If it went from a dentist office to a clinic, those are all still medical offices, so it's not a change in use, it's just a change in tenant. And so with this...
So let's carry that one step further. So if it went from a dental office, let's say, to a retail space, that's still the same?
So that would be a change in use.
That would be a change in use, okay.
Mm-hmm. And so with that concept, these triggers would be is that there's those 2 different options that would require a review, and we can decide what level of review is appropriate. So we can have the planning commission have to step in and say we want to review that, Other times we would have it be something that's handled administratively. So we check a few things and then they kind of move on. So the pros of having these two triggers with the existing language that we have is that this would proceed administratively, which is relatively common for change in uses, and that the Planning Commission would then evaluate those without requiring that public hearing for that change in category. That's the trigger with step one. And then you have the different standards associated with denial for that site plan review and things of that nature. The con is that category or class changes threshold is unique to our community. And so it's not as common in the industry when they say, well, I'd like to convert these. They know they should stop in, and that's going to be a planning commission meeting. So it's just more industry, how familiar the industry is with that process. And then we have applications does require review by the planning commission. So they have to wait to hit our monthly cycle. It's time and it's money, at least from an applicant standpoint. So that's essentially option number one. And so if you look at what I termed draft two, the biggest difference between draft one and draft two is I added option 4, and I made sure that the track changes came through with it. So I apologize for last month. The redlining didn't get exported properly from the document. And so what I'm proposing is that we would clarify that change in category or that change in use in the site plan review requirements when the planning commission is then involved, as opposed to then in the administrative review when it's just a change in use, that would continue to be handled administratively.
Okay.
But I tried to tweak the language so it's easier to understand what is a change in classification, and that's when we want the planning commission to be involved in that decision.
So any establishment that fits under the umbrella of use and they all fit within that category, that would be an administrative function.
Correct.
Dale would take care of that and do whatever is required to get that person going, whatever that happens to be. Now, when you get into a change of category, then is that something that Dale would need to bring to us to discuss?
Correct.
Does that make sense to the members? Okay, we're moving on. Sounds good.
Okay.
Dale, does that sound agreeable to you?
Yeah, of course, it depends on what level you wanted to set it. That's perfectly fine.
Well, I mean, like I say, anything that's in a change of use, if you have an open facility and you have somebody that wants to apply to fill that facility and it fits within the use category as we have them defined, that would be totally your responsibility. If somebody wants to change to a different category, then that would be something that I think we'd like to at least talk about. Does that make sense?
You will then look at parking requirements and the things that impact that. And
Yes.
that's perfectly fine.
Okay,
Perfect.
very good. All right, Caitlin.
All right, so option 2 is similar to option 1, except the only thing is we're taking out the category. And so with taking out the category, we're also taking out the Planning Commission's review of this. Now, as a reminder, these are all permitted uses. If it is a special land use, you automatically have to hold a public hearing and it has to come before the Planning Commission. So these are for permitted uses. And this option 2 would only be an administrative route.
Okay,
So it would not require any oversight by the Planning Commission.
gotcha.
And so with option 2, this is very common practice for communities. It's an administrative process. It's fast, it's efficient. It's not very costly. People can typically know by the end of the week, do I meet all the requirements? And then they can move
Because
forward.
they're dealing with Dale.
Correct.
Okay,
Yep, and verifying parking and things of that nature. And then they can sign tenant agreements and things of that nature
okay.
pretty quickly. And so the cons of that is that you're losing that level of oversight. If it is like a new restaurant was coming downtown, that would not be coming before here, but if they can meet the parking calculations, the answer would be yes.
Okay,
And so we have to ensure that when we're looking at the list of permitted uses, we are in fact comfortable with everything on that list to just come in and occupy a space.
okay.
So that's option 2. And so in the draft form, you can see that I removed D regarding as part of site plan review, that extra step, and then just highlighted in 12, that change in use, that would be something that would be that administrative process.
Okay.
So then we have change, option 3, which is talking about a change in tenant. So the change in tenant is that the business itself is changing from one to another. So a
Okay.
new concept from before. So if it is a dentist office and it goes to be a different dentist office, we are checking it for compliance, where they have to come in, file some paperwork, and then move on. So typically when you have a change in tenant, that means doesn't matter because you include all change in uses as well. And so the most common application is this is also an administrative process. This is not as common in the industry, but the city of Lapeer does it this way, so it's not super uncommon. It is something that is relatively quickly processed. Some ways communities still feel informed, even if it's handled administratively with change in uses, is you just add it to like a development report. So every month you would see, oh, we got 2 new tenants that are been approved in our downtown for this. So you stay abridged of what's happening. And that can be done still for the change in uses as well, if you went that route as well. But that's one way to stay informed, but you're not a decision maker as part of that. So the cons is that it's a little bit more of an administrative burden. So if you have a change in tenant, that's more common as opposed to one restaurant to another restaurant. That's not a change in use, but I'd have to have you come in and still file some paperwork to verify. So it's just a little bit more oversight and policing, to be honest.
But it still is an administrative function.
Correct. So it's still relatively efficient. It's not very costly. Most of those permits are around like $50 or something.
Yeah.
That's really, we're checking that we have those on files. The other thing that's sometimes helpful with the change in tenant that some communities have done is they've added on an emergency contact form that they update. So that way our fire department, police department, they have the contact information of that tenant.
Okay.
And so it helps us kind of check other paperwork. Same thing with water bills or things of that nature. We know there's a change in tenant, and so it triggers other things. When you have a change in tenant, you usually change the sign. So it's not going to be the same restaurant with the same sign. And so it helps us to set them and say, these are all the other applications you have to fill out. So that's one thing I didn't really highlight in the letter, but depending how much bureaucracy you want or coordination, that's something that can be built into that review process. And then option number 4 is that you have a change in category and a change in tenant. So it's kind of going back to your option number 1, bringing back the categories. And so it is a little bit less familiar, but you still keep some level of planning commission oversight is the intention when you have a major change. And then you still have all the same cons associated with the tenant changing. And so those are the 4 different options that are associated with it.
When you're with 4 different options, however, we're addressing 3 different issues: category, change in use, and tenant, correct?
That's correct.
So that we're affecting 3 categories with the option. There's no single option that covers all 3, is there?
Yes, so option 4 would be all of them.
Option 4 would be all. So walk us through that one more time, how it affects all 3.
So change in category would still be reviewed by the planning commission.
Okay?
And then a change in use and a change in tenant would be the same thing, and they would be handled administratively.
Administratively.
Yeah.
Okay. Does that make sense to the members? That's why I wanted to go slow.
Yeah,
'cause
it does.
But we're trying to encapsulate 3 items: category change, a change in use, and a change in tenant. And it appears that the change in category does require or would require the involvement of the planning commission, correct? Change in category.
Correct.
but change in use and change in tenant would be an administrative function by the village. In a nutshell, does that make sense to everybody? I'm getting a lot of yeah. No, I mean, really, does it make, I mean, if you have any questions, I'm trying to simplify it as easy as we can.
Well,
Go ahead, Steve.
One of the things that I think was previously raised and discussed is a lot of transactions, sale of a business, sale of real estate. My office handles a lot of them. And if there's a delay by reason of having to come before the planning commission, it could stretch the completion of the transaction out by a few weeks, or maybe 2, 3, 4 months, and you lose the deal. Because some of them need to move quickly. And if they don't move quickly, that frequently puts the transaction in jeopardy. So for that reason, I urge that we do the zoning administrator, on an administrative basis, give that a priority, because that enhances expediency and moving quickly. So there's that general overall view. And then in terms of, it's not very popular to say in this county with its particular political alliance to say, I believe in regulation. I'm not supposed to say that. And I do, because it has safety aspects and abuse aspects that make sense and should be there. However, I also do not believe in overregulation. And during my time as president CEO of the village, for decades, I heard from local businesses, it's hard to do business here in Alma because we have so much regulation. And putting in, adding change of tenancy to that is, from my point of view, overregulation. Because diving into the innards of a business, which, quite frankly, I think is totally unnecessary. And it smacks of overregulation from my point of view. So, and having to deal with these things still to this day in my law practice, that's my overview of all of this. So I'm urging that we pick option 2.
Option 2?
Yes. Only change in use. Zoning administrator, go quickly, but not taking too deep a dive.
So then what would happen then if we had somebody come in that wanted to change, that wanted a category change?
It would be
Then-
processed as a change in use and would be handled administratively.
Does that meet with everybody else's approval? Does that make sense?
No, I agree. I agree on what Steve said. I think option number 1 is basically is pretty close to what we just rescinded a couple of meetings ago, that we didn't want them coming before us all the time. Change in tenant is just getting into a bigger administration debacle it's not common practice, especially in smaller villages or cities comparative to a larger city that has a lot of oversight and a lot of buildings and stuff that are coming in. It's redundant, it's inefficient, it detours the efficiency of getting it done because we're getting the village sticking our noses in it. So I think number 2 is the most efficient way to go.
Anybody else?
Even on all is, if any part of it, if Dale thinks it's something that, hey, maybe this might be something the planning commission, he can ask for that at that point, say, well, this might be a little more than, what we actually talked about.
Mhm.
And we have that as an option. We can still come here with it.
Sure.
Yeah, I think this topic, my mind goes two places. One, the vision of the village, what do you want it to look like? And, do you want to hold some degree of control over what's here, who's here? But at the same time, you don't want to stifle new business, right? Because if you want your village to grow and you want, a different population here, or just to have it grow in general, like you said, even a few weeks can be enough to kill a deal. So, Caitlin, could you re-explain option 2 for me though, just personally, because
Sure.
this one seems a little bit light to me, but I just want to understand it a little better.
Basically what we do now.
Option 2 is, or option 1?
Option 2.
Oh, okay.
Basically what we do now.
And so what we did with the edit in 7 is taking out the site plan review part, in which the planning commission is given a role. And so we took that part out because when you have that change in category or change in use, we're no longer having that be a planning commission oversight. And so what I highlighted in 12 is that no permit shall be issued for construction, alteration, remodeling, or change in use of any building or structure. And so that language doesn't need to really be altered unless we wanted to add more clarification of what that process should be. That was one of the critiques in our analysis letter that was provided by Mr. Snyder regarding what are we checking. So zoning permits always check, is it a permitted use? Are there any use design requirements? And does the parking satisfactory? So we could add that in here to make it more simplistic. You could also just make a better zoning permit application that already has that built in, so I don't need it in the code book, because you already have to do those things, just pull it from different spots. So I would probably not change any language in 12 and just would handle it administratively, make the form better, and then just include information that we need.
Okay. Does that sound good, Steve?
Yes, and we know our manager is a tremendous amount of experience with regard to these matters, so
Okay.
that's why I'm comfortable with option 2.
Okay. Any other questions? Is that something that we are agreed upon?
Right, I don't think we have any reason to say what a tenant's gonna be.
No.
Change tenants, who cares? Why do we care? Because I know a bunch of things that's happening with tenants changing. What do we know? We don't know anything.
Right.
Why should we?
Good point. Good point.
So then the last item on that agenda then is on page 5 of draft 2. And then the second part of the review letter, which is really talking about parking. And so with our downtown, there's a combination of private and public, and it's quite meandering. So like if you walked there, you'd be like, oh, that's all public. And you're like, actually, no, it's not. And so when we get into this situation of this being handled administratively and verifying of parking, that's something that I think we could change options, and I provided option A, B, and C. That would help administer this a little bit more smoothly. So we're not talking about requiring variances in our downtown area and things of that nature. So Dale did reach out to the DDA director, and so I did get some information from them regarding the parking that's currently in our DDA. So there's 168 available public parking spaces. So 18 are by the church, 115 are on Bristol Street, and then 34 are on Branch Street. I did not count the on-street parking, but there are a collective several parking spaces that would otherwise be allowed there as well. And then you have as far as lease agreement areas, there's about 56 parking spaces with 0 of those parking spaces designated. So we don't say like this is your specific parking lot for XYZ is my understanding. As far as our occupancy, so right now our occupancy in the downtown is about 5%, so it's very good. So we don't have a lot of vacancy. So if we imagine, I guess, our future, we don't see a whole lot of probably dramatic parking changes because we have major full occupancy and things of that nature. So, and then there are some vacant spots in the Crackle Barrel lot and some office spaces in the Roots and things of that nature. And so just for an example, I didn't put in my report, but if there's an office space that's 1,000 square feet, that requires 5 parking spaces. And so if you have anything that goes from an office space to, like, let's say a residential space, it requires less parking than the office space does. So if you're thinking of change in use, for the most part, unless it's like a restaurant, that's really the variable as far as our permitted uses go, because it's based on seat counts. That would be really the only, I think, major traffic parking potential variable. And so what I provided in option A, B, and C then is essentially modifying the language to say that that you could waive the parking requirement. So A is that the planning commission can. So if in the C1, our downtown zoning district, they don't meet the parking calc administratively, they could come to the planning commission without having to do the ZBA variance route situation, because those would be hard variances to get.
Yeah.
And so we would just look at the planning commission, say, would you like to waive? They need a 3 parking spot variable. They could, because technically you can't grab from public, you have to have it on private. And so that's where the waiver, with discretion by the planning commission, that's something you could consider. Does everyone understand option A before I go to B?
What page is that on?
5 of 5. So then option B is properties within our downtown. Each tenant will receive an administrative waivers not to exceed 20 required parking spaces. So what I'm attempting to do is have a threshold where we want to check in. 20 is more or less an arbitrary number that can be changed to 10, that can be changed to 5. I think when you're looking at a major change in use, 20 parking spaces is a lot.
Yeah.
And so that's when I think administratively that's maybe going to cause an issue. And so that maybe is when you would want oversight. So that's why I picked 20s, because 5-10 parking spaces, give or take, our downtown generally can handle that. May not be exactly where you want it, but we generally have the capacity since we're already relatively full.
Yeah, and you're also not saying that all 5 or 10 are going to be full all day long.
Correct. There is a
So,
level of sharing.
You could have a level of change going on within that 5 or 10 that would accommodate people coming and going. So, yeah, okay.
And so then administratively, we would do the calculation. If it's over 20, that's when we would have to potentially check in, but automatically anyone with less than 20, you're good to go in our downtown.
Okay.
And so, and you can look at the waiver, and we can look at available public parking as well. So there's an additional threshold. So you get 20 automatically. We assume you can do public parking as some of that shared area. And that's kind of our basis for it. So I guess trying to be cautious of them being really far away from public parking. Well, maybe it's not appropriate to call that then. And then otherwise, I still mentioned you can still get an administrative waiver from the planning commission. So trying to make sure that if it's over that 20 threshold, or if it's under 20, it can be handled administratively.
Mhm.
If it's over 20, we still allow the planning commission to say, this is okay.
Given the current downtown and given the current businesses that are downtown, what type of scenario would count for 20? What kind of scenario of a new entity coming in would make that 20 thing a reality?
I would say a restaurant.
Yep, I would say another one on top of the ones we have. I mean, with the ones that we have now, that parking lot behind them on Fridays and Saturdays is usually full.
Right.
I mean, it really is. It's packed.
And
So if you had another very popular restaurant, you could easily add on another, 10, 15, or 20 patrons coming in then we'd have a little difficult time where to put them all.
And you would
Yeah,
also,
Dale,
I was just gonna say, a perfect example is that we were recently looking at Roots developing the second story. That would, in this case, it was for office, but if it had been restaurant space in that particular corner, we would have had to use our lease property across the street and push it into service on a real regular basis, or make them walk from the other side of 53. So that is a perfect example. I was actually going to suggest that Caitlin use that as an example in each one of these cases to demonstrate how they would work.
because the only other use that typically pops up is like your personal service establishments for like nail salon stations or barbershop chairs. That parking calc actually goes pretty quickly because you,
Whether it's high turn.
Yep,
It's
so-
a fast turn.
yep, and usually if they have 4, 6 chairs, we want 2 parking space or 1.5 parking spaces per chair.
So,
And so that number comes up pretty quick. So I think it's really hair salons, nail salons, plus restaurants that you'd really hit that threshold.
so if we incorporated the 20 threshold that had to come before us to make the decision if they could do it or not, what criteria are we building off of to make that decision?
So it's basing on available public parking near that area. So when we're talking about how far are you walking, some of it could be a little bit more detail on the operation. So there is not discretion when someone says, well, this is how I actually run my business. Because sometimes they have different checkout windows, or I guess how they decide, like for the tattoo parlor, they're like, well, we don't have quick turnarounds.
But if but a tattoo parlor is probably gonna have less than 3 people within it at one time. So if you've got a new restaurant coming in that is affecting those parking spaces on the east side that we're talking about, what determiners are we using to state, because we know where it's at, we know most nights there's spaces, especially with the additional behind the theater now that we purchased, but what determiners are we making knowing that that lot is going to be packed with all those restaurants on Friday and Saturday to grant or not grant? Because if I'm sitting on this board, I'm sitting there with a question mark over my head saying, should I allow this?
So what I would probably, what I would provide is a more in-depth parking analysis to help you make that decision and evaluate it. So we would look at that block, say, who are our tenants? What are their parking calc requirements? And what is this new burden?
And we do that on a per case basis.
Correct. When you hit that 20 threshold, we're like, okay, this is going to be a big impact. It's worth the time to lay that case out to you to say, here's all the availability, on-street parking included, and other things of that nature.
that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so.
Think so? Okay.
Option B.
I
And
just
then-
want to make sure if we.
No, that's a good question. It's a very
I just
good
want to make
question.
sure if we do the 20 threshold, that our body is taking into account the correct information to make a decision, because it could make or break a business, but we also have to take in consideration the existing businesses that are here and how it affects them in their business, so.
I mean, really worst case scenario, suppose you had a restaurant came in with the volume that Blake's gets just down south of us. That parking lot for dinner on the weekends, there must be 30, 40 cars there. If you had a restaurant like that that could fit in the village,
Right.
we could have a problem with.
Well, we could, because we have the overflow with the church parking lot, but if they decide they are having a Friday night event.
Yep.
Then that,
Or if it's like a breakfast restaurant and they're closed by 3. So that
Right.
doesn't compete necessarily with the other ones that
Right.
are open up more long. So those are different factors that kind of help you evaluate, is there available public parking to deal with this?
Yeah. Dale?
Well, based on your last decision, anything like this would probably be in front of you anyway, because you'd be changing the use that would bring in.
Nope, PC is not involved. It's administrative now.
I thought the change in use was the one you picked.
Yep, but planning commission is not involved in that. It's only administrative.
That's a change in use is administrative function. But I mean, you let's, suppose that did happen. Well, another example going the other way is Bistro only has breakfast and lunch, and they don't have any dinner. So where Sal's place is, that parking lot in the afternoon's empty. Because there's nothing going on there. So you do have trade-offs as far as parking is concerned, but yeah, I mean, you drive by Blake's on the weekends, and there's 30, 40 cars there all, you could have that situation, so.
We really don't have a room for a Blake's down there, though.
We don't, do we?
And so, I mean, a restaurant of
But
that size.
I'm just trying to exaggerate the worst case
Right.
scenario. If somebody came in and said, or within the village, they want to, build on or add on to something that includes a restaurant, and oh, by the way, it's extremely popular, and I might get 40 or 50 guests in here at night. Then what do we do?
Well, true, if Roots opened a second type of restaurant upstairs, that could easily bring 20 or more people in
Could.
at 6 o'clock on a Friday night. Very
Sure.
good.
Yep.
So does everyone understand option B? Because then option C is the easiest. We just don't do any parking verification in the downtown.
We just dump it all on Dale, is that right?
So for example, like the city of Lapeer does this.
Yeah.
So they have a lot of excess public parking. They don't have a lot of quasi-public, private. They don't have that factor. And so you just don't check it in their downtown. Now they're a different downtown makeup. But that's not uncommon in downtown settings where you do have that luxury.
Is that our current?
Your current is that I would do a flat out parking calculation, and if they didn't need it, we would say no. So if they didn't have on-site parking, which causes kind of like an awkward situation because there is public available, I can't speak to other zoning permits that are in process because I haven't been involved. I would assume that they've kind of included some of those, but it's an extreme gray area as it currently is reviewed.
So for us, for committee sitting here, then the question is, how nosy do we want to get into parking? Is that right?
Yep.
And do we? That's what it boils down to as our members here. So that's what we need to talk about, is because Caitlin can get us out of talking about parking at all if we write it that way. So the question is, do we want to be involved in parking, or is that going to end up being an administrative function? That's the question, from what I'm understanding.
I think option B fits most neatly with what we decided in terms of option 2 as to change in use. And so it stays administrative. I think that our manager can handle this. And there is the opportunity for the applicant to request a variance from the ZBA.
Well, if it exceeds it, it comes to us.
So the reason I added that last line about variance is just to clarify for due process purposes. So if, let's say, they came forward, the planning commission said, we're not giving you your waiver on the parking. They understand as a tenant, your due process is you can still ask for a variance at the ZBA.
I
So
see.
this is just a faster process because we have a different standard to meet, which we say, is there available parking in the public area? And that's going to help us evaluate the yes or no appropriate, as opposed to the 5 standards. Is this a use that, or a variance that you created? Well, I'm a tenant and I want this many tables, and you're creating your own issue because you could have less tables and then you would meet our parking requirement.
That's the variance standards, right?
Correct. So that would be parking is a hard variance to get in those contexts.
Okay.
Give some flexibility.
Yeah, it does. Does that seem amenable to everybody? Yeah? Wow, we have agreement tonight. Moving right along.
Option B.
All right, so, do you need motions from us on which ones we've decided?
I have my notes, so I have the general consensus, and I'm sure that'll be captured in our minutes. So I don't
Okay.
need a motion.
So then we're talking about option 2 for change of use, and we're talking about option B for parking.
Correct.
Dale, does that meet your abilities and everything?
It sounds very similar to what we've been doing,
Okay,
so, which it is exactly. We do talk about parking. We
Yep.
have had some discussion, but pretty close to what we've been doing all along.
okay. All right,
And so the next step in the process would be to hold a public hearing then
oh, good.
on these text amendments. So if you wanted, you could make a motion to say you want to do that public hearing, either doing it in December or in January if you want to be off for the holidays. I don't know of any current tenant that would be needing to use this right away. So
It's up to the members. You want to do it in December or do you want to do it in January?
January sounds good.
January?
It's January.
January?
Yeah.
Have we-
Start off the new year?
Have we met our number of meeting requirements for the year?
yeah,
Is New Year's Day is the one we have to move, right?
correct. You.
It falls on a Thursday,
Yep, it's the first.
Yep.
So it would be,
January 8th?
I believe that, well, I don't know, what's your schedule for 2026?
If the first is on a Thursday, then the following Thursday should be the 8th, right?
It is.
So it would be, our first meeting would be January 8th. then.
Better way to ring in the new year than have a public hearing.
Do we need a motion?
Or we can do February. Again, we're not aware of an applicant that needs this provision for clarification. And if something does come up, we can always have a public hearing sooner if somebody does express a need.
Well,
So-
then let's shoot for January, and if something happens, then we'll move it to February. That'd be okay?
Do you mean to flip that? You're willing to do February and do it sooner?
If something happens.
Unless something happens, yeah.
Okay.
So February is the.
February, we'll do February? Okay. February sounds good, all right.
We need a motion for that?
You don't have to, but you can if you'd like.
I'll make that motion for February.
February. Do I have a second for that motion? And that's for the public hearing, right? Yeah. Do I have a second for that motion?
Yep.
Gary? Yep.
Yep.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carried. February will be public hearing night.
Do we have to have a specific date? Or in the motion?
I believe the intent was to have a specific date, but you don't technically need one. Or if you wanted to revise, or
That's what I'm trying to figure out.
or if we could say or add clarification that the motion was for a public hearing on February 5th unless otherwise needed by the administration.
Okay,
I'll modify my motion. to
all
make-
right.
Make it
That's been
February
amended.
5.
Yeah. That amended by, is okay with you, Gary? But we amended the motion just the way Steve had worded, in case,
Oh,
something.
that's
happened.
fine. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. All those in favor of the amended motion?
Let me hear the
Aye.
amendment. Please recite the amended motion.
Schedule the public hearing for February 5th unless otherwise needed, earlier by administration.
I was looking at the dates, so I didn't hear you, I'm sorry.
All right, we have a second, for our motion, and we have a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Caitlin, very much.
Welcome.
So we will have, at that meeting, we will have, how many changes then? Two?
2 changes
Two changes.
between and then and now.
All right, is there anything else from anybody? Otherwise, I'll accept the motion for adjournment.
So moved.
I have a move by Steve, second by Tim. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carried.
Got stuff done.